Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Money Talks with Attorney Coral. I am Attorney Coral Pleas, the host of the show, and just thanking everyone for joining us every Thursday morning from 11 a.m. till noon. The Money Talk show comes live to you from WNOV Radio. That is 860 a.m. and 106.5 FM each and every week. A great thank you to Columbia Savings and Loan Association for sponsoring the show every week, and I'm just excited to be here today. I'm going to be talking about insurance. Um, that's a very broad topic, but I thought it would be one of interest to the community today. Um, I also always like to encourage listeners to call in with any thoughts that you might have to add to the discussion. So I'll go ahead and just at the top of the show, go ahead and put the phone number out there: 414-444-5250. That is 414-444-5250 or 5253. Insurance has been a topic on a lot of people's minds lately, in part because of the flood that we, especially in the Milwaukee area, well, I shouldn't say, I mean, I know it was in other locations as well, but the Milwaukee area was hit very hard by the flood a month or so ago. And so there's been a lot of insurance questions coming my way as a result of that. So I thought that today would be a timely day to talk about insurance just in general, not necessarily related to the flood, but just in general, and the significance and the importance of insurance. Okay. So this show is first and foremost educational. I'm not giving legal advice or any legal guidance whatsoever, but it's information that's being provided to the community, which is hopefully educational. But if there's times when people would like to join in the discussion with your own educational comments that relate to the topic of the day, then I always like to encourage that as well. Um, so let's start real basic in terms of a definition. What is insurance? I decided to go ahead and just be real practical and look up the definition of insurance and share that today. Everybody has an understanding of what it means, but to have the technical definition of what insurance is, I thought would be a good starting point. So it looks like, do we have a caller already, Jermaine?
Yep.
Okay, well, caller, please go ahead. I'll come back to my definition after the call. Thank you so much for calling in. Please go ahead.
Oh, I just want to add some value to what you're talking about. I think when you talk about insurance, we have so many people getting contractors lined up to do work for them or to do construction remodeling work, especially after the flood. People need to make sure whoever's doing your work is insured and bonded. And the second component is that you actually have a contract which lists the scope of work or what they're doing, schedules, and your payment component, because some of these people are asking people to put all the money up front, and so you can't. You can either pay them in thirds, one part up front, one in the middle, and then pay them the total at the end. And then the last thing is making sure you have lien waivers for the work that they're doing, because people don't understand that if they don't pay the vendors they got the material from, then you become responsible for it on your house, and they can file liens against your property. So those are things that, since you're talking about what the floods have precipitated, yeah, there's an insurance issue, but now you get into the whole contracting component of when these insurers pay people to do this work, and you must be protected then too.
That is an outstanding comment. So thank you so much for that. Yes, yes, I appreciate that. And we've seen that quite a bit of late here in my role at the bank at Columbia Savings, because there were unfortunately some of our mortgage holders who suffered losses in the floods, and they have reported them to their insurance companies. And a lot of times they'll come into the bank with the check in hand because, when the bank cuts the check for their insurance loss, they make it payable to the customer and Columbia, because obviously if Columbia has a mortgage on the home, Columbia has a lien and therefore has an interest in that property, and making sure that these things are handled properly, like the issues that you just raised. That lien waiver, that's a huge one. And I've seen that play itself out over the years in these types of situations. But you're absolutely right. So the first thing that I say to the customers when they come in, because a lot of times they'll be misinformed, and they think that, oh, I'll just come to Columbia, I'll have them endorse a check over to me, and then I can just go do whatever I want to do with it. And I have to say, I'm sorry, but that's not the way that it works. In fact, you've got to endorse it over to us, and we will hold that money in trust, so that once I've reviewed and they've provided the scope of work, like you mentioned, what are the intentions in terms of the payment, the contractor and the contract that they have, so we can verify that they are insured and bonded, which are items that you also mentioned. And then, of course, what we have done historically is, okay, maybe they do need a third of the money to get started, but then when you make it through maybe half of the project, another third of the payment can go out. And then upon completion, once there's been an inspection, sometimes there's a need, depending upon the extent of the damage, to pull permits with the city. So we want to make sure that they've got the licensed, appropriate professionals that are doing that work,
Yeah.
so that once it's reviewed, it can be approved. And so the final payments can be issued. But as you mentioned, lien waivers are very, very important, because you definitely don't want someone putting liens against your property. So you're absolutely right. And I thank you very much for that comment.
Oh, you're welcome. And the main thing these people don't understand about the lien waiver is the contractor bought materials to put into your house to make those repairs. He has to pay his bills. And if
Yes.
he don't pay his bills, then that vendor can come after you because the materials were used to repair your house. And
Mm-hmm.
so you tell people that, I say, you don't pay them no money, no final payment until they produce that document and put it in front of you, signed and dated, so that it says your liens have been waived. If anything goes wrong, your house and your property are not responsible. But
Exactly.
there's all of these fly-by-nighters out here, and they're running around, they're doing this work for people, and people aren't protecting themselves because all the vendor has to do is not pay his bills, and it's on you.
Right, exactly. I couldn't underscore that point enough. So thank you so much for reiterating that. You're
Yeah,
absolutely
I've spent
right.
most of my career in construction and architecture, so I do understand it because I had to see it happen at the commercial level, at the bigger level,
Mm-hmm.
and you're right. You must protect yourself, but you have to, and if you need to, all attorneys don't understand this too. You understand, so you got to find somebody who understands that whole process you just explained when they come into your bank when you look at a project. Because, like I said, these vendors are telling you all kind of stories, what they're gonna do and what they're not, and you get buy into it, and in the end, they're not hurt. You are.
Right. And you said something real important with your initial comment, that they're, I think you called them fly by nights, but I think that that's fair in some instances. But, that sometimes they'll say, okay, I need all the money up front. And that's a red flag, because that's not the way this traditionally works, for all the reasons that you just stated. So if
No.
anybody's asking for that, then I'd say that's a red flag to look a little closer with what you're doing, so that you can and do protect yourself.
Right, references, all the kind of things you would need to make sure they can take your project on, complete it, and of quality. And even sometimes at the end of the project, we require a punch list. A punch list is you go back over the project and make sure everything was done to your satisfaction, which
Mm,
would precipitate that you now can pay your final payment because you accepted the work all as is. You can't wait till after they leave and then go back and look at stuff and say, "Oh, they messed that up. I should have caught it." No, you do a punch list as a part of the completion of the project, and then they don't get final payment until all the work has been done to your satisfaction.
mm-hmm. Yeah, no, that's absolutely,
I got a
absolutely
question
it.
for Tyrone Dumas. I know that's you, my brother. How you doing?
I'm all right, thank you.
Good. I got
I
a.
didn't realize that was Tyrone Dumas. Hello, Mr. Dumas.
So
Good
have
morning.
you ever either of you ever seen a scenario whereas the contractor puts a lien on your property
Uh,
for failure to
I
pay?
think. Oh yeah. Well, I had a situation where somebody, a senior lady, needed some work done on her house, and she had to get a roof. The contractor charged, I think, 15 or 20 grand. She couldn't pay for it. It came through the county, and they have a lien on that house to this day. If that house is ever sold, that lien kicks in and it has to pay off that lien before it can be sold. So I've seen it that way too. Because even if you are referred by a legal entity, you still can be responsible for making sure that all of the stuff happens at the end of the project. So it can fall somewhat on the owner of the house.
Mm, thank you.
Yeah, and Debo, I've seen it happen too. And but in the a couple of instances that I'm aware of, we ended up negotiating a resolution so that the liens could be disposed of. But yeah, that was a real threat. At one point, they actually did go ahead and put a lien against a home. It was a contractor, it was a general contractor
Mm-hmm.
that believed that they were not paid what they were owed under the contract. So there was, it was one of those situations where people started off without, in my opinion, the proper legal guidance and input, that left some areas a little bit vague. And they didn't do what Mr. Dumas suggested in terms of a punch list. And
Mm-hmm.
there was just some discrepancy and some disagreement at the end in terms of the scope of the work and what should have been done. And
Mm-hmm.
just all those sorts of things that if your contract documents are adequate, shouldn't be a problem once it's all said and done. But this kind of started off with little too much of a handshake deal rather than having some things in writing, which resulted in disagreement at the end in terms of what was owed and what should have been paid. So a lien was placed, and but we were able to just kind of negotiate our way through it and get everybody to not be happy. But that's what happens when you got to negotiate resolutions. Everybody's a little bit upset. Whoever had to pay feels like they paid more than they should have, and whoever was getting the pay feels like they got less than they were entitled. But it
Mm-hmm.
was better than litigation. It was better than what the cost and the time that would have incurred.
Mm-hmm.
So they went ahead and worked it out.
Yeah, and warranties too, because sometimes they put in stuff in your house and there's warranties, and they're supposed to give you all of the paperwork so that the warranty now becomes your responsibility. So if something fails and they can't come back, you can call the vendor and still get it completed. So there's all these little steps that you have to be protected by. That sometimes people get, as you know, I call it being jerry rigged out of your legal rights to what needs to happen.
Hmm. Absolutely.
All
Those are
right.
all really
Well,
good
Thank you
points.
both.
Well,
well,
thank
thank
you.
you
Thank you
all.
for your
God
question. And
bless. Yeah.
thank you, Mr. Dumas, for calling in. Um, okay, so yeah, that's why I really do enjoy when people call into the show and have a depth of knowledge or information on a particular topic and call in and share it, because then it can be so beneficial to so many people. This is a real issue that's going on in the community right now, particularly because of the recent flooding, and this is what people are going through. And so we want contract documents to be as solid as they can be and that the proper steps are taken. Sometimes what happens, and I had this happen a few times in recent weeks, that there will be customers of the bank that again have unfortunately sustained damage to their home. They had insurance in place. They were able to have the insurance company cut a check, and then the customers will think, well, okay, I lost some of my property in this flood. So, but unless the I can have an itemization of what that check represents, and if
Mm-hmm.
there's any part of it says that it goes to the reimbursement or replacement of their personal property, then that's fine. But typically that's handled separately. By the time the check is cut with the name of the bank on it, it and the scope of work is attached, it's itemized so that it really is pertaining to the restoration of the property. The property, what I'm saying, I mean the home.
Right,
Okay.
because you have an interest in it as well as the bank.
Exactly. And that's the hardest part that I, have kind of had to try to help people to understand. But people will say, yeah, but I lost my, pool table or my, whatever, whatever. But if that's not listed in the scope of the work, then
Hmm.
that's not what we're paying out for. Our interest is making sure that that property gets
Is
restored.
that typically found more under renter's insurance when you start talking about the personal items such as a pool
Well,
table or what have you?
it could be, but in my experience, even with homeowners insurance, there are provisions of reimbursement of property that you may have lost.
Hmm.
But in my experience, now I don't know, maybe different companies might do it differently, but in my experience, what companies will do, if they are reimbursing for the loss of personal property, they will cut a separate check
Right, right.
payable to that insured person for the property that they're reimbursing for, whatever the value
That only
that they
makes sense though
established.
because they can't. Well, you could, but you don't want to commingle the two
Exactly.
because you
For
have a banking institution that's tied to the
exactly.
back part of that, which holds the mortgage or what have you. So,
Exactly, exactly. Or the other thing that sometimes people will come in and they'll say, "Well, I'm going to do the work myself." And they think that that's good enough. Well, if you happen to be a licensed contractor, then I suppose you can do that. But if you are like me and barely know which end of a hammer to swing, I can't, go along with that because we have to be careful and we have to have the most assurances that we can that the work is going to be done in a workmanlike manner, um, up to code and
right, right.
all of those appropriate
And codes
things.
could have changed from when it was original. So now it may need to look a different way. When I went into bar business, I made the mistake of thinking I was going to be smarter than the city.
Hmm.
Well, I had one of my jackleg friends come in there and do the plumbing and everything. And when the inspector came out, he says, "Well, no, it didn't look like this when we were last here. This, that, and the other. Well, who did the plumbing? I had a friend of mine do it. Mm-mm.
Right,
So I paid my friend, paid for all the material. He made me he made me get a hold of a plumber, a
right.
licensed plumber who he referred, come
Hmm.
in, basically onced over everything that was done, changed two pipes, everything else was right, and
Okay.
charged me $800.
Wow. So in the long run,
I, yeah, I beat myself trying to
yeah.
beat them,
Hmm.
trying to
Hmm.
go around and circumvent the city, and the system.
Right, right.
It's in
And
place
I
for a
get it.
reason.
I understand why people, would even want to try to do that, but for the integrity of the home, um, and plumbing is certainly something important. But I know that when I was selling one of my homes, the first home, there we needed to do an upgrade with the electrical work. It had one
Hmm.
of those plug circuits, and I don't know, something had to be done. And I had the
What had the fuse box, the screw in fuses?
yes, yes.
Yeah.
And so I was recommended a person to come in and handle it. And at the time, I just, I didn't know the difference. Okay, if he says he knows how to do this, come in and know how to do this. But this wasn't, it turns out it was not a licensed professional. I took the recommendation of the realtor that I was working with at the time
Hmm.
and recommended me a person who didn't really have the credentials, did not pull the proper permits. And sure enough, I came in the house one day and flicked on the light switch, and like a charge shot out, like a flame shot out of the socket.
Mm.
And I was actually glad that it happened to me as opposed to the woman that I sold my home to,
Hmm.
because she had a young child. And I thought, what
Right.
if that little boy had been the person and maybe had his hand up there and got burned or something?
Hmm.
So then I thought, you know what, I can see why. So by the time we called the city to come out, and it was the same thing as your experience, they said, nope, 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 nope. Get a licensed person in here. No one pulled any permits.
Hmm.
And everything that needed to have been done, we basically had to start over from
Yep.
ground one.
Yep.
Yeah. But at least with that, I was satisfied that it was done correctly and that it was going to be a safe home to pass on to someone else for ownership. I would have felt
Yes, ma'am.
terrible to know that I passed on a home where, there were things there that could harm someone's
Yeah, and
child.
it was electrical fire. And
Yeah,
you had a
absolutely.
bootlegger in there.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I get it.
So, yep, we had to start from scratch and do everything by the book, which is the way it should have been done. And I kind of had to shake my finger at that realtor that spun me in the wrong direction on that. But that taught me something too, that even people in the industry will sometimes, and they know that they know better, but will still sometimes trying to run that game. Yeah. So that's not a good
Did you
thing.
ever get a chance to get to your definition?
Oh, you know what? I didn't get a chance to get to my definition. I think I probably just have enough time to do that before we take our first break. So thank you for that. Um, so yes, the Webster's Dictionary's definition of insurance. I probably could say it better than this, but I'll go ahead and read it. It's a practice or arrangement by which a company or government agency provides a guarantee of compensation for a specified loss, damage, illness, or death in return for payment of a premium. And otherwise, you pay a premium to a company. Let's just say, to keep it simple, leave government out of this for a moment. You pay a premium to a company in exchange for their guarantee that they will compensate you for a specified loss or some sort of damage or illness.
Hmm.
But you pay the premium to ensure that. So that's what we're looking at. That is the definition of insurance, and then I paraphrased it and took some of the wording out, and hopefully to make it a little more clear. But no, thank you for that. Thank you for that. So, Jermaine, are we doing good? Or are we? Is it time? We're good. Okay. So it looks like it's that time. I'm usually good at being mindful of that, and I see that that's where we are. So, but yeah, we'll be right back with more talk of insurance. Please call in 414-444-5250 if you'd like to add to the discussion. We will be right back after the break. Back to Money Talks with Attorney Coral. Thank you so much for listening this morning. We're talking about the topic of insurance in general, and it looks like we've got a couple callers holding, so I'll jump right in. Caller, thank you so much for holding while we were on break. Please go ahead.
Oh, let me turn this speakerphone.
Yep, it's good if you can turn it off or turn it down because we
Okay.
want to be able to hear you project your voice. So please go ahead with your comment or question.
Okay. It's both. Um, I have an incident like with my insurance. It is something after I heard Tyrone this morning, it opened up some gateways for me. Uh, at 2 o'clock in the morning, the police had an incident where a young man was in a car and they chased him and they knocked my fence down. So they left the information and I called. In the city, they have so much to go through. It's not even worth it sometimes. At the end, you might not receive any compensation for it anyway. So I went to my homeowner's insurance, and when they researched my policy, they said that part of the incident was not covered under my insurance. So that left me without anything. So I called that's what the adjuster told me. So I called the agent
Mm-hmm.
and he explained it to me. So I asked him, is specifically anything that I can do because things are changing so much. And he said, well, you have a good policy. He said, so I don't see anything that I could put in it to improve your circumstances. So um, I, my question is, how do you be able to get insurance? Like now, I live around trees, and if my insurance would it cover if the tree would fall on my house and ruin my roof? Was that covered? And when I went through the policy and I try to read it because it's all so, I just can't catch it. I don't understand the wording because a lot of it is done in a more maybe professional. I don't understand the wording,
Mm-hmm.
but and then the other thing I don't know if you would know about this. Years ago, we had a, um, a really bad flood. People. Well, I had my house was really damaged, and I had Allstate, and I didn't even know it. And when I called, uh, and I remember when the agent he offered to sell me some insurance, it would be FEMA, but it would be kind of like covered through Allstate. So it wasn't costing that much, and I was employed at that time because I was younger, and I accepted. And when that happened, I think in 2021, and they came here and they completely did my basement, put new water towels in, opened up the floor where you could see the ground, and they did. And I never had put a sump pump in. I never had any more trouble. But the agent told me that he didn't know anything about that yesterday. This morning he told me that. So there's so much complications, and how do you work around these things?
Mm-hmm. So you ask a good question. Let me ask you one question, and then I will endeavor to respond, but just carefully because I'm don't want to try to give you legal advice over the radio. But you mentioned that after the police chase damaged your fence, and you went to your homeowner's insurance, that they denied liability for that claim. Do you recall the basis of that denial?
Uh, they did send me a letter saying why, and I kind of understood that. So that's why I just that's what the adjuster sent me, the
Mm-hmm.
reason why. And I
Mm-hmm.
keep all the letters I got from them, so I do have the letter.
Mm-hmm.
But and
I was wondering if they might have referred you back to the process that the city has in place when the police cause damage in a situation like that, because there is a process that you can go through, where the claim that you bring gets evaluated by one of the city boards, and then they do make a determination once they've reviewed your complaint or your claim and any evidence that you have to support it. Then they will make a determination as to whether or not it's something that the city will reimburse you for. I wondered if maybe that was the reason it was denied through the policy, because they redirected you towards the city. Do you recall that at all?
No, the city the city referred me back to the homeowners insurance. That's what they and I did start with the city, but at the end, I didn't go complete with it because you had to go to common council meetings.
Exactly.
Then you had to go back and do something else. They had to approve it, and at the end of it, might take 1 or 2 years. But and if they find something they don't want to approve, it you just out. They say that's why you see so many houses where incidents happen where they ran into it, and some of the damages are still there because the city takes so long to cover stuff.
Right. No, you're that's fair. And I definitely have experienced that process, and I know that it can go on and on. When I've seen it in some instances, let's say if someone's driving down a city street and there's a big pothole or something that damages their car, and then I've seen people bring claims for different things like that with respect to the city, or even with different actions with the police. And I know with some actions, the standard of review is whether or not they were negligent. And if the police weren't negligent, sometimes you can't recover anyway. I don't know if that's the case in your situation, but I can understand where that process would be or could be a little disheartening because of how long it takes and the likelihood of you actually getting anything. So I certainly sympathize with that. It's unfortunate that it wasn't covered by your homeowner's insurance, because that would have made it a cleaner
Yes.
issue. Yeah. Well, but I was going to say to you, because of the questions that you've asked, how do you get the best deal basically from insurance? And you mentioned, if a tree would fall on your home, is that something that it would be covered? Well, it's funny because I had that issue myself recently. I can speak to that from a personal standpoint. I don't know the language of your policy, because policy language can vary from contract to contract depending upon who your carrier is. But the issue that happened to me in my yard, there was about an 80-foot maple that was struck by lightning in a recent storm just this summer, and the tree split down the middle, and half the tree went in and blocked the street that I live on, and the other half of it hit my neighbor's house. So it did not hit my house, and it did not damage my house, but I paid almost $3,000 to have this tree removed from the property and taken off of my neighbor's house. And I did it right away the very next morning after it happened, because my neighbor's house got clobbered by this huge tree that had been in my yard. But in any event, it was interesting because the insurance company denied the claim, and they said to me, well, it didn't cause any damage to your property. Therefore, under the language of my contract, they took the position that this tree falling was not covered. Now, I'm disputing it. Even though it fortunately didn't cause really any visible damage to my neighbor's home either, what I paid for was for them to remove the tree from the neighbor's home and cut it up and haul it away. And to come back and grind out the stump and all of that, which is why it was so costly. But there is a provision in the policy that says that if it basically defense of others, right? Like there's self-defense and then there's defense of others. So I'm saying I paid this money out for sake of my neighbor, that I had to get my tree off of their house so that it wouldn't cause, damage or more extensive damage. So with the jury still out on how that's going to pan out. And I say that as a euphemism because I have not filed a lawsuit against them. But if they don't cough up my $3,000, they just might see me in small claims court, because that's what I do. So, but we'll see. So I wish I could answer your question specifically, but I think what I would say is you're going about it the best way by having a good relationship and a dialogue with your agent, because they specialize and they understand the language of these policies, which can be very convoluted. I agree, but they will be able to give you the best guidance. And it sounds like you have consulted the agent and you're doing all the right things. It's just an unfortunate situation where it sounds like with this fence that there's been an issue.
Okay. Now, one more thing, and I'll go. Um, have you any knowledge of, like I said early in 2021, the insurance company covered everything I had, but I noticed and it wasn't, it was, let's say the call of what I had on my homeowners was a rider, because sometimes the agent can give you advice and it'll help you in the future. And that's what this one did. And I went on and I purchased it because it wasn't much money involved in it. Maybe it made the policy go up $15 or $20. And I said, okay, but in the end, it worked well because while people was waiting for FEMA, and it was FEMA who came here and did the work, but I didn't have to go through all this wait till the government do it, because this rider policy that I had with Allstate, they got in contact with my agent did, and they were here in less than 24 hours.
Hmm. Wow. No, that sounds good. And whatever that rider was and whatever the terms and circumstances were, I think you just said it all. Sometimes you'll have a good agent that will know how to recommend certain things, and maybe, just different recommendations that they'll have for different customers for a variety of reasons. And it sounds like that's something they were able to get out ahead of, so that when the issue arose for you, it could be handled expeditiously. So I'm glad
Yes.
about that.
So I'm just wondering, well, I don't know. I would have to get with an insurance company to find out. I'll call FEMA to find out do anything like that still exist. But
Right. Either that or with your agent, and see if there's other riders that could be put on the policy, depending upon what it is you're seeking protection for. There's different types of riders depending upon the circumstances, but I would say that that's the best place to start. Just in terms of something specific to your policy with the company that insures you, or other companies if there's
yeah,
differences in the contracts. Yeah, I can only speak broadly about it, and not in the position of offering advice, but just raising some of the issues and just saying that it's good to have a good agent that is very, very knowledgeable and knows how to explain things and make the best decisions to protect you for the future.
okay. Well, thank you for the information, and thank Tyrone too. I really appreciate it.
Oh yeah, me too. I'm so glad he called in. So thank you for your call, and you have a good rest of the day.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Bye.
Caller, thank you so much for holding. You held for quite a long time. So please go ahead with your question or your comment. Thank you for holding.
Yes. Good morning, attorney. Excuse me. I'm sorry. Your name?
Coral, yes, I'm
Yes.
Coral.
Yes, Attorney Call. I beg your pardon. Only thing I want to say, thank you so very much for being there, and thank you for taking care of the concerns of the community respectfully, and especially insurance. Now, what I would like to share, Attorney Corley. Excuse me, did I get that wrong again?
It's Coral, but that's fine.
Corley,
Please.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, don't worry about it. Just go ahead and
Hey,
share. Go ahead and share your
hey,
thoughts.
Mr. Debo and Jermaine is going to get me on Monday or Tuesday, okay? But anyway, I just want to say, you have to also be careful. And excuse me for saying this, not to put gasoline on the fire, but you have to be also diligent to do your research when you do involve yourself with a certain insurance company or something like that, and make sure that they are licensed to, do service in the state of Wisconsin. Because a lot of insurance companies, you will see the commercials, right? Uh, if you're 65 years old, 85 years old, da 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 da, d d d d. But what I'm trying to say, especially selling insurance, you have to be licensed. Because if the insurance company is not licensed to sell insurance in the particular state that we are in, there'll be a hard place trying to get your, whatever. So I guess what I'm trying to say, excuse me if I'm over the map or anything like that. My
No, go
question
ahead.
is,
You're fine. Just take your time. Go ahead.
what I'm saying, uh, I've heard that if the insurance company is not licensed to sell insurance in a certain state, it would be difficult for people that do have insurance to collect their proceeds or anything like that. So my question is, what do you think about when we say they have to be licensed? Insurance company, anybody, if he is not licensed in a certain state, it may be difficult for you to collect, you know, whatever. So my question is, what do you think about being licensed? You have to be watching out for that. Make sure that they are licensed to, do business in the state where you are, and regard the commercials and stuff like that. So again, I'm gonna leave this with you. What do you think about certain insurance companies have to be licensed to serve the community, like you are, because you
Hmm.
are your company are licensed, okay?
Right.
So, so that's my question, and I thank you for taking my call, and I appreciate your response.
Okay. Thank you so much for calling.
You're
Um,
welcome.
sure. So that's an interesting question. Um, and if there's anyone, this is where I welcome call-ins. If there's someone that wants to elaborate on this further than what I'm about to do. Um, so my understanding, as relates to, let's say, insurance companies, when in my law practice, it's common for me to bring claims and even lawsuits against insurance companies. And so the first thing I do is I look up the state website for the Department of Financial Institutions, right? And I make sure that I can identify that particular insurance company on the website for the state, that basically says, okay, here's the official legal name, here is the person or entity, usually it is an entity, who is the authorized agent for service of process upon this insurance company. It'll usually then often list, it'll also list their corporate headquarters, and it'll say that this is a company that is authorized to transact business in the state of Wisconsin. So that's how I know, and that's how I go about verifying the insurance company. Usually the ones I deal with, I've heard of, right? They're usually the big ones. Everybody sees the commercials for on television. But sometimes there's a company that I've not heard of before, and I will go to that website and I will verify the authenticity of that corporation, that insurance company, and that they are in fact authorized to transact business in the state of Wisconsin. So once you've got that nailed down and you see them right there on the public website, and then that lets you know. And then, of course, if you're not able to resolve a claim with the insurance company, then checking that website does give you, as I just mentioned, the person or entity that you name in a lawsuit. If you end up needing to take them in court, that's who you name as their authorized representative, and that's who you actually serve with all of the legal papers related to the commencement of the litigation. So that's where that information is made public. So again, if there's anyone else that has any more light to shed on that particular question or topic, please feel free to call. Again, the number here is 414-444-5250, 414-444-5250, or 5253 if you'd like to add to that or elaborate on that response. But that's what I do in order to verify the identity of the company and that they are in fact authorized to transact business in the state of Wisconsin. So I appreciate that call. That was a very, very good question. I know too that there's different licensure, different professional licensure for agents. people who sell different types of insurance. So what I may do in future shows is just bring on even Dr. Fuller, who's been here with me in recent weeks several times, because I know he has a particular licensure for the type of insurance that he sells. There's different types of insurance. I'm sure there's different types of licenses, and I'm not expert enough to elaborate on that, but I can bring in other people who can speak to that. And, hopefully that would be a thorough answer to the question that the caller had. So, wow, it's been a good day, with the questions that we've had coming in. So, yeah, I like to. That we've been able to talk through so much of this. And I've talked myself right up to the next break. So I will be back after the break with more Money Talks from Attorney Coral. We are discussing insurance on today's show. We'll be right back after the break.
Hey, I'm Jimmy Jackson. This week, the Congressional Black Caucus Foundation will host a Veterans Brain Trust during their annual legislative week. The session is called Reintegration After Service in the United States Armed Forces, Civilian Transition, Traumatic Stress, and Aftermath. African American the fabric of America. And so it's important at this point that we have talent that continue that uh, this
Okay, we're back with Money Talks with Attorney Coral. Thank you for staying with us through the break. Now we are back on the show, and I just had a few closing comments here since we're talking about insurance today. So, why is insurance important? I had a few bullet points that I just wanted to talk through. Insurance is a safety net. It acts as a financial safety net, shielding you from potentially overwhelming costs, whether it's related to accidents, medical emergencies, property damage, or other misfortunes that could occur. Another important reason to have insurance is to prevent debt. Without insurance, large unexpected bills for medical care or property repairs could lead to deep financial debt, or in some cases, extreme cases, even bankruptcy. Another good reason to have insurance is peace of mind. Um, Knowing that you have coverage for potential disasters reduces stress and anxiety, allowing you to live with greater confidence in your future. Now, of course, that's notwithstanding everything I talked about, the claim that I had that was denied that I'm disputing, or even um, the caller that called in and mentioned that she brought a claim that was denied by her carrier. It does happen that some claims are not covered, but you still have greater peace of mind having insurance because you know that the things are covered are specifically laid out in the contract language of the policy. Okay. And there are different types of insurance. And as I mentioned, I'm going to look forward to maybe bringing some guests on the show that specialize in different areas. But health insurance is one type of insurance that's important because it'll protect you against the high cost of medical costs from accidents or serious illnesses. um, Auto insurance, which is the one I've worked the most with throughout my professional career. It's essential for protecting yourself and others in a car accident, covering the costs of your property damage or medical bills or even potential legal fees, and also pain and suffering, because that can be a big component depending upon how badly you might have been hurt. Life insurance is another type of insurance that's important. Why? Because it provides financial support for your family and dependents after your death, covering debts, living expenses, and income replacement. Um, we've talked a little bit today about homeowners or renters insurance. And again, this insurance specifically protects you from property damage or loss and covers liability if someone's injured in your home. Last but not least is business insurance, which minimizes financial losses from events like lawsuits, fires, damage to property, and can protect employees from work related injuries. So there's other types, but those are just a few to name a few. So thanks to everyone that called in the show today that made this a good, informative discussion. I'm looking forward to being back here next week, Thursday, with more Money Talks with Attorney Coral, and we'll see you next week. Bye, everyone.